$1 billion US fund for infrastructure development. President of the Continental Bank Dr. Akinwumi Adesina says, speaking at the opening of Africa50 General Shareholders meeting in Kigali, he says the money will be drawn from the private sector. Africa50, an infrastructure investment platform, currently has $870 million US in committed capital from 27 African countries, as we mentioned earlier on, including the African Development Bank, the Central Bank of West African States, and Bank of AL-Maghrib of Morocco. Sarah Kimani, again, she spoke to Dr. Adesina.
Africa has a huge infrastructure deficit gap, financing gap, which is about $68 billion to $108 billion. And so we need different kind of instruments to be able to mobilize that. Of course, as you know, the African Development Bank does massive investments in infrastructure, but we also needed a platform that is actually private sector oriented to be able to attract private money to come into infrastructure financing that delivers a market rate of return to the private sector. And that's why we created Africa50. And we also realized that when it comes to developing infrastructure projects, the biggest challenge is how to actually prepare bankable projects. And this has always been the big problem, actually, yields for infrastructure on the continent. So Africa50, we designed it in such a way that it has two companies. A company that does investment in projects, infrastructure projects, that gives market rate of return, but also another company, a project development company, that helps to prepare projects, bankable projects. And so this is what we're really doing. And if you take a look at the Continental Free Trade Area, which has opened up a market of $3.3 trillion. Well, we need ports, we need rail, we need highways, we need ICT infrastructure. And so we just need to harness all of our instruments and institutional arrangements and partnerships to make sure we close that gap.
Are there priority areas? And also, are there priority countries? Are there countries that are so infrastructure deficient that it must be done now and you must start there?
Yeah, absolutely. If you take a look at the Africa50, Africa50 has 27 countries that are members of it right now. It's something that we gave birth to from the African Development Bank. You know, my goal is to make sure that we are able to get 54 countries that are going to be all members of Africa50. Yes, the landlocked countries are the ones that, from the African Development Bank side and from Africa50, we're doing a lot of those. Africa has today roughly 18 countries, I think 18 countries, that are landlocked. So we've got to be able to link them to the ports, have the highways that they can use, and ICT infrastructure for business service outsourcing that will allow them to also participate in shared prosperity on the continent. So we are focusing on that. But in terms of critical sectors, it's really energy, because energy, as you know, for us, energy is the key. The second one, of course, is ICT infrastructure. Ports is also very, very, very important. And of course, innovation. And one of the things that Africa50 is supporting here, which we are also from the African Development Bank also co-financing, is going to be the Kigali Innovation City, which will help to build a big platform for how you bring entrepreneurs together to unlock creativity of a lot of our young people to create their own businesses.
I want us to dwell much on ICT infrastructure, innovation hubs in relation to the young population of the continent. Quite a bright idea for you to decide to invest in that now. Are you seeing countries interested in that? And why innovation hubs? Why ICT infrastructure? Why now? Why Africa?
Well, you know, the world is changing so fast. You know, we're talking about a world as a digital economy world. It's a knowledge-intensive world. And so it's no longer your comparative advantage as a country or as countries. It's no longer going to be determined by the amount of natural resources that you have. It's going to be determined by the creativity of your people, the knowledge, the ability to be entrepreneurial and create world-class businesses. And you know, you know that in the world that is a digital economy, the ability to code, ability to program is going to drive a lot of things. From the African Development Bank side, we are helping to establish 130 coding centers, working with Google and Microsoft, so our young people can actually get into that very, very quickly. We supported the Kigali Institute for Science and Technology, which is chunking out today top-notch masters people in ICT, and also with Africa50 now coming on board to support the Kigali Innovation City. That's going to help to be able to create viable businesses.
Of course, you can watch the full interview on the Globe at 10 p.m. or 2200 hours Central African time. So